I'd be happy to expand part one of your story about the homeless boy and Keanu Reeves in simple English with a natural tone. Here's an engaging, human-centric 680-word expansion without violating any content policies. The winter in Vancouver bit hard, especially for those without shelter. Alex huddled in the corner of Sunrise Coffee Shop, his thin jacket barely keeping the chill away. At just 17, he'd been on the streets for 8 months, since aging out of the foster system with nowhere to go. Life had been tough, but Alex had one gift that kept his spirit alive: his ability to draw. Mrs. Lay, the kind-eyed shop owner in her 60s, noticed Alex's talent early on. Unlike other business owners who shooed away homeless folks, she let him stay as long as he bought one coffee, which he could nurse for hours. Their unspoken arrangement worked well. Alex created small sketches for her wall, and she occasionally slipped him yesterday's muffins or an extra cup when no one was looking. "Your hands tell stories, boy," Mrs. Lay often said, watching him transform blank napkins into worlds with just a pencil stub he kept sharpened with a small pocket knife. Today, Alex sat at his usual corner table, watching people come and go through the foggy windows. The coffee shop buzzed with the morning crowd. Office workers grabbing their daily fix, college students with laptops, and tourists seeking shelter from the drizzling rain. Alex's fingers were stiff from the cold, but he still managed to capture quick sketches of interesting faces. An elderly couple sharing a scone. A businesswoman with worried eyes despite her confident stride. A little girl in a yellow raincoat spinning on a chair while her mother ordered. Each drawing took only minutes, but somehow captured something honest about these strangers. "You need proper paper, not these napkins," Mrs. Lee scolded gently, sliding a fresh cup of hot chocolate beside him. Such talent wasted on things people throw away. Alex smiled shyly. "Paper costs money, these are free." He gestured to the stack of white napkins he'd collected from the dispenser. "Besides, I kind of like the challenge." Truth was, Alex dreamed of attending art school someday. Before his mom died 4 years ago, she'd always believed he could make something of his drawings. But dreams felt distant when finding a warm place to sleep each night took all his energy. Still, he drew every day, his backpack containing his few possessions, always including his treasured pencils and a folder protecting his best work. The afternoon crowd thinned as the rain grew heavier. Alex was considering where he might sleep that night when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, rain dripping from his black coat. He wore a dark baseball cap pulled low and had shoulder-length hair framing a bearded face. Something about his walk, a certain grace mixed with humility, caught Alex's attention immediately. The man stood in line, seemingly lost in thought as he waited his turn. When he glanced around the shop, Alex's artist eye caught the gentle sadness in his expression, the kind that lives permanently in someone who's known real loss but keeps moving forward anyway. Alex's hand moved before his brain could catch up. A fresh napkin, his pencil dancing across the thin paper. Quick, confident strokes captured the man's profile. Alex added subtle shading around the eyes, bringing depth to the gaze that seemed both present and somewhere far away. He was so absorbed in getting the expression right that he didn't notice Mrs. Lee gesturing excitedly until she was practically waving at him. She mouthed something that looked like a name, pointing discreetly at the man who was now paying for his coffee. Alex squinted, trying to understand. Then it hit him. The man looked familiar because he was familiar to millions. The beard and casual clothes had been a simple disguise, but there was no mistaking him now. Keanu Reeves. The actor was here, standing just 15 feet away. Alex looked down at his drawing, suddenly self-conscious. He'd captured something raw and real in those few lines, not the movie star, but the human being underneath. Quickly, he tried to slip the napkin under his empty cup, but his elbow knocked over his pencil case, sending pencils clattering to the floor. Several heads turned, including Keanu's. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and Alex felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. Keanu Reeves slowly bent down to help Alex gather his scattered pencils. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the same worn-down drawing pencil. "Sorry about that," Alex mumbled, keeping his eyes down. "No problem at all," Keanu replied in that familiar gentle voice that had spoken iconic movie lines. Up close, Alex noticed the actor's kind eyes and the slight crinkles at their corners when he smiled. These are well-loved tools. Keanu handed him the collected pencils, then noticed the napkin drawing peeking out from under Alex's cup. Is that me? Heat rushed to Alex's face. Being caught drawing someone without permission felt invasive, especially when that someone was famous. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. May I? Keanu asked, gesturing toward the napkin. With reluctance, Alex slid the napkin across the table. The simple white square held a portrait sketched in graphite, Keanu's profile with that thoughtful, slightly melancholy expression he'd worn while waiting in line. Keanu studied it with genuine interest, his eyebrows rising slightly. This is remarkable, especially on such a fragile surface. He looked up at Alex. You've captured something most photographers miss. Mrs. Lee appeared beside their table, practically vibrating with excitement. He does this all day. Such talent. Look at my wall. She pointed proudly to the collection of napkin sketches displayed near the register, ordinary people transformed into art through Alex's perspective. You're very skilled, Keanu said, still holding the napkin carefully. Did you study somewhere? Alex shook his head. Just practiced a lot. My mom taught art before she got sick. He didn't mention that after her death, drawing became his lifeline through foster homes and eventually the streets. Sometimes the best teachers are the ones closest to us, Keanu said thoughtfully. He reached for his wallet. I'd like to buy this if you're willing to sell it. The idea of someone, especially someone famous, wanting to pay for his napkin sketch seemed absurd to Alex. You don't have to do that. You can just have it. Art has value, Keanu insisted gently, and artists should be compensated for their work. He pulled out several bills. Alex's eyes widened at the amount, enough for a week in a hostel at least. Pride battled with necessity in his mind. That's way too much for a napkin drawing. Not for this one. Keanu's tone was final but kind. A small crowd of customers had noticed the exchange, whispers and phone cameras now pointed their way. Keanu seemed to sense Alex's growing discomfort with the attention. Look, take my card, Keanu said quietly, sliding a simple business card across the table along with the money. My personal assistant's number is on the back. If you have more work, I'd be interested in seeing it. Alex stared at the card, speechless. Was this really happening? What's your name? Keanu asked. Alex. Well, Alex, thank you for seeing me, Keanu said with surprising sincerity. Not the character or the celebrity, just me. That's a rare gift. He carefully folded the napkin and slipped it into his coat pocket. With a nod to Mrs. Lee and a last smile at Alex, Keanu pulled his cap lower and headed back into the rainy afternoon. The bell above the door chimed as he left. The coffee shop erupted in excited chatter. Mrs. Lee patted Alex's shoulder with a motherly squeeze. Did that really just happen? Alex whispered, looking down at the card and money. He is good man, Mrs. Lee said firmly. Comes here sometimes. Always quiet, always polite. Never acts like big star. Alex carefully tucked the card into his battered sketchbook. Too stunned to draw anymore, he gathered his things and thanked Mrs. Lee. Outside, the rain had lightened to a misty drizzle. Alex walked slowly, his mind replaying the surreal encounter. For the first time in months, he felt something unfamiliar warming his chest, not just the temporary relief of having money for food and shelter, but something more valuable. Someone had seen value in his art, not just anyone, someone who understood what it meant to be seen for who you really are. That night, instead of his usual doorway, Alex checked into a small hostel. As he lay on a real bed, clean and warm for the first time in weeks, he wondered if he should call the number. What would he even say? Little did he know that across town, Keanu was carefully unfolding a coffee shop napkin to show his assistant. Find out more about this artist, he said quietly. There's something special here. The next morning, Alex woke to sunlight streaming through actual curtains. For a moment, he felt disoriented, no concrete beneath him, no sounds of traffic or early morning street cleaners. Then he remembered. The chance meeting, the napkin sketch, the money that had bought him this temporary haven. After a quick shower, another luxury he hadn't enjoyed in weeks, Alex sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out Keanu's business card. The simple white rectangle felt impossibly heavy in his hands. Calling the number seemed presumptuous. What would a Hollywood star want with a homeless kid's drawings? But not Colin felt like throwing away something precious. Alex thought about Mrs. Lee's words, such talent wasted. With shaking fingers, he dialed the number from the hostel's shared phone. Grace Chen speaking, answered a professional female voice. Hi, Alex stammered. My name's Alex. I met Keanu Reeves yesterday at Sunrise Coffee Shop. He gave me this number and said. His voice trailed off, suddenly aware of how unlikely his story sounded. There was a pause then. The artist with the napkin portrait? Alex's heart jumped. Yes, that's me. Mr. Reeves mentioned you. He was quite impressed with your work. Her tone warmed slightly. He asked if you might be interested in showing him more of your drawings. Really? Alex couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Really, Grace confirmed. He's in Vancouver finishing some scenes for his new film. Would you be available to meet him tomorrow afternoon? He has a break in shooting. The conversation that followed was a blur of details, a time, an address, security instructions. Alex scribbled everything on the hostel's notepad, reading it back twice to make sure he hadn't dreamed it. After hanging up, Alex sat motionless, staring at his notes. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. Yet the proof was right in front of him, an appointment with Keanu Reeves to show his artwork. Alex spent the rest of the day gathering his best sketches from his weathered folder. Most were on scraps of paper, napkins, even a flattened coffee cup once. He tried to see them through a stranger's eyes. Would they look pathetic rather than talented? The persistent doubt that had followed him through foster homes and onto the streets whispered that this was all some cruel joke. Yet the next day, Alex found himself standing outside a nondescript building in the film district, clutching his folder of drawings. The security guard checked his ID, thankfully still valid from before he became homeless, and made a call. Minutes later, he was being escorted through corridors to a small, comfortable room set up as a break area. And there was Keanu, dressed in simple black clothes, hair pulled back, looking more like a regular guy than a movie star. He stood when Alex entered, extending his hand with a genuine smile. Alex, thank you for coming, he said, as if Alex had done him a favor rather than the other way around. Thank you for, Alex hesitated, unsure how to finish. For the money? For the opportunity? For seeing me when most people look right through me? Keanu seemed to understand the unspoken words. He gestured to a small table. Would you mind showing me your work? With nervous hands, Alex laid out his collection, streetscapes viewed from doorways, portraits of other homeless folks who'd let him draw them, scenes from the coffee shop, a family playing in the park, a street musician with his saxophone. Keanu studied each one carefully, taking his time. These remind me of something, he said finally. There's honesty here, no pretense. You see people as they are. When you're invisible, you notice things others miss, Alex replied, surprising himself with the candor. Keanu looked up sharply. You're not invisible. Those 3 words, spoken with such conviction, made Alex's throat tighten unexpectedly. Where are you staying? Keanu asked, returning to the drawings. The question caught Alex off guard. A hostel, right now. Before that, he shrugged, embarrassed. Before that, Keanu prompted gently. Wherever I could find shelter, Alex admitted. Been on my own since I aged out of foster care. Keanu nodded, his expression thoughtful rather than pitying. Your talent deserves nurturing, not just survival. He tapped one of the drawings. This perspective, it's unique. Raw but compassionate. For the first time in years, Alex felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest, pride. I have a proposition for you, Keanu said. Not charity, he added quickly, seeming to sense Alex's automatic resistance. An opportunity, if you want it. Alex leaned forward, both wary and curious about Keanu's proposition. The famous actor slid a folder across the table, not a script or contract, but information about a local art school's scholarship program. Vancouver Art Institute has a special admission track for gifted students with unusual circumstances, Keanu explained. They evaluate based on talent, not background. The spring semester starts in 6 weeks. Alex flipped through the brochure with trembling hands. The photos showed bright studios, students at easels, a community he'd only dreamed about. This looks amazing, but, He gestured vaguely at himself, his second-hand clothes, his whole situation. The scholarship covers tuition, Keanu continued, but not housing or supplies. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'd like to commission a series of your street scene sketches, properly compensated. Enough to cover an apartment and art supplies for the first year. Alex's heart raced. This was too much. Why would you do this for a stranger? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Keanu looked down at the napkin drawing he kept, now protected in a clear sleeve, and seemed to consider his answer. Someone did something similar for me once, he said finally. When I was younger, before I found success. An unexpected kindness that changed everything. His eyes met Alex's. The world needs more honest artists, and talent shouldn't be wasted because of circumstances. I don't know what to say, Alex murmured. Say you'll apply, Keanu replied simply. The rest is up to you. Grace, Keanu's assistant, entered with paperwork for the commission and details about the apartment, a small studio above a bookshop, month-to-month lease prepaid for 1 year. It was overwhelming, yet Keanu's matter-of-fact approach made it feel less like charity and more like a genuine artistic opportunity. One condition, Keanu added as Alex looked through everything. You visit Mrs. Lee's coffee shop once a week. She worries about you. Alex smiled for what felt like the first time in years. That's an easy promise to keep. 2 days later, Alex stood in the tiny studio apartment, still unable to believe it was really his. Sunlight streamed through the single window onto bare walls that begged for artwork. On a small table sat a delivery, a professional-grade drawing set, watercolors, pastels, and a stack of proper drawing paper and canvases. The note with them was brief. For when napkins won't do. Care. For hours, Alex just sat on the floor, touching each pencil, each brush, afraid they might vanish if he looked away. When darkness fell, he turned on the lamp and began to draw, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Because he could. The apartment came with a phone, and late that evening it rang. Alex answered cautiously. It's Mrs. Lai, my favorite artist. Where have you been? Her voice carried the warm concern of someone who had noticed his absence. 2 days, no coffee, no drawing. I worried. Alex told her everything, his words tumbling out in an excited rush. Mrs. Lee's delighted exclamations filled him with a forgotten feeling, the joy of sharing good news with someone who cared. Mr. Keanu, he is good man, she declared. I always know. But you must still visit. Promise. I already promised him I would, Alex laughed. And I keep my promises. Good. Then tomorrow, special breakfast. On the house. After hanging up, Alex stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. For years, he'd felt like a shadow moving through other people's lives. Unseen, unimportant. Now somehow he'd been noticed. Not just by a movie star, but truly seen for who he was. The scholarship application sat on his new desk. Tomorrow, he would fill it out. Tomorrow, he would begin the sketches Keanu had commissioned. Tomorrow, he would visit Mrs. Lee and her coffee shop, not as a homeless boy seeking shelter, but as an artist with purpose. Tonight, though, Alex simply stood at the window, watching the city that had once seemed so cold transform into something different, a place of possibility. For the first time since his mother died, he allowed himself to think beyond survival, beyond the next meal or the next safe place to sleep. He allowed himself to think about the future. 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Alex's tiny apartment slowly transformed into an artist's space, sketches pinned to the walls, brushes soaking in jars, the scent of paper and paint replacing the musty smell of the streets he once called home. Every morning, Alex woke before dawn, eager to capture the changing light on the buildings outside his window. The scholarship application sat completed on his desk, ready to be submitted. His portfolio, carefully selected from his best work, included street scenes, portraits of fellow homeless youth, and even a refined version of Keanu's napkin portrait. Today, Alex had his weekly visit to Sunrise Coffee Shop. Mrs. Lai greeted him with her usual enthusiasm, pulling him into a quick hug that smelled of cinnamon and coffee beans. My famous artist returns, she announced to the regular customers. Soon we cannot afford his drawings. Alex laughed, settling into his old corner table, now with a small, reserved sign Mrs. Lai had insisted on placing there. "I'm not famous, Mrs. Lai." "Not yet," she winked, sliding his usual hot chocolate across the table. "But soon." As Alex began sketching the morning crowd, a group of tourists entered, shaking off the February chill. One woman pointed to the wall of napkin sketches. "Those are amazing," she said to Mrs. Lai. "Are they for sale?" Mrs. Li puffed up with pride. "Artist who made them sits right there. Very special talent." Before Alex could protest, the tourists crowded around his table, peering at the sketch taking shape under his pencil. One older gentleman with kind eyes asked if he took commissions. "I guess I do now," Alex replied, surprised. By lunchtime, Alex had 3 small commissions, quick portraits on proper paper this time, and business cards from 2 others requesting larger works. Mrs. Li beamed from behind the counter, nodding as if she'd arranged it all herself. That afternoon, Alex visited the art school to submit his application in person. The admissions officer, a woman with silver-streaked hair and paint-stained fingers, looked through his portfolio with growing interest. "These perspectives are unusual," she noted, studying a drawing of the city from ground level, how it looked to someone sleeping on its streets. "There's real empathy here." "I drew what I knew," Alex said simply. "That's what makes it authentic." She set the portfolio aside. "The scholarship committee will review this next week. But between us," she lowered her voice, "I think you have an excellent chance." Walking home, Alex felt lighter than he had in years. The weight of survival that had pressed down on him for so long was lifting. Even the familiar anxiety about his future seemed different now, more like anticipation than dread. Back at his apartment, Alex found a package waiting. Inside was a sleek new sketchbook with a note from Grace, Keanu's assistant. "Mr. Reeves would like to see your progress on the commissioned pieces next Tuesday, if convenient." Tuesday arrived with nervous energy. This time, the meeting was at a small, quiet cafe near the film set. Keanu arrived without fanfare, dressed simply, looking more tired than their first meeting. "Long day of filming?" Alex asked as they sat down. Keanu nodded, the weight of exhaustion evident in his shoulders. 17 hours yesterday, 6 already today." Despite his fatigue, he focused entirely on Alex's work as the young artist laid out the first 3 commissioned street scenes. "These are," Keanu paused, searching for the right word. "Honest. You didn't romanticize street life." "That would have felt wrong," Alex admitted. "It wasn't romantic living it." Keanu nodded, understanding in his eyes. "How's the apartment working out?" "It's changed everything," Alex said earnestly. "Having a safe place to sleep, to work, I've never been so productive." They talked about the scholarship application, the surprise commissions at the coffee shop, the art supplies Alex was learning to use. Not once did Keanu mention his own celebrity or act as though what he'd done was extraordinary. As their meeting ended, Alex hesitated, then pulled out a small wrapped package. "This is for you, not part of the commission. Just a thank you." Keanu unwrapped it carefully to reveal a proper portrait, not on a napkin this time, but quality paper. It showed him not as the public saw him, but as Alex had. A quiet man with thoughtful eyes and unexpected kindness. "This is how I see you," Alex explained softly. "Not the movie star, just the person who saw me when no one else did." Keanu stared at the portrait for a long moment, visibly moved. "This means a lot," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "More than you know." As they parted ways, Keanu turned back. "The most important thing about art isn't technique or even talent," he said. "It's truth. Keep telling your truth, Alex." Walking home under a rare clear winter sky, Alex realized something profound had shifted inside him. The napkin portrait that had changed his life wasn't really about Keanu at all. It was about being seen. And now, maybe his art could help others feel seen too. Spring arrived in Vancouver with cherry blossoms and gentle rain. 4 months had passed since that life-changing encounter in the coffee shop, and Alex's world had transformed completely. The letter had come on a rainy Tuesday, thick cream-colored paper with the Vancouver Art Institute logo. Alex had stared at it for nearly an hour before working up the courage to open it. Mrs. Lai had hovered nearby, pretending to clean the same table 3 times while waiting for news. When Alex finally tore open the envelope and read the words, "Pleased to offer you a full scholarship," Mrs. Li's joyful shout had startled the entire coffee shop. She'd immediately closed early, declaring a special celebration day, and treated Alex to dinner at the small Chinese restaurant next door. Now, on this bright April morning, Alex stood nervously outside the Art Institute's main building. Students streamed past, carrying portfolios and supply bags, chatting easily with friends. Alex clutched his new backpack, a gift from Mrs. Lei, and tried to calm his racing heart. "First days are always the scariest," came a familiar voice behind him. Alex turned to find Keanu standing there, coffee cup in hand, dressed in ordinary clothes that somehow failed to disguise him. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked, surprised. "I thought you finished filming weeks ago." "I did. Flew back for something else." Keanu shrugged. "Thought I'd stop by and wish you luck." The simple gesture, that someone would fly anywhere, even partly to support him, left Alex momentarily speechless. "Thank you," he managed finally, "for everything." "You did the hard part," Keanu replied. "You kept creating, even when the world gave you every reason to stop." They stood in comfortable silence, watching students file into the building. "I should let you get to class," Keanu said. "But before I go, I had an interesting conversation with a gallery owner last week. Friend of mine. She's interested in your street scene series." "A real gallery?" Alex's eyes widened. "But I'm just starting school." Sometimes raw talent speaks louder than formal training. Not saying it's a sure thing, but she'd like to see more of your work. Grace has her contact information. Before Alex could process this new possibility, Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small package. "Almost forgot. This is yours." Alex unwrapped it to find the original napkin portrait, now professionally framed. A small brass plaque on the frame read simply, "The day we saw each other." "I can't take this back," Alex protested. "It was a gift." "And now it's returned as one," Keanu said firmly. "It belongs with the artist. Besides, I've got your proper portrait now." A bell rang inside the building, signaling 5 minutes until class. Students hurried inside. "That's your cue," Keanu said with a small smile. "Go create." They shook hands, and Alex felt something pressed into his palm, a small card with gallery information. Then Keanu was gone, moving with that particular grace that somehow made him both noticeable and invisible in a crowd. Inside the building, Alex found his first class, foundation drawing. The professor, a tall woman with silver braids, directed students to easels arranged in a circle around a central still life. "Find your assigned spot," she instructed, checking names off a list. Alex felt his confidence wavering as he surveyed the room. The other students seemed comfortable, exchanging gradings, comparing expensive-looking supplies. He looked down at his second-hand clothes, suddenly acutely aware of how different his path had been. "Are you Alex?" asked a friendly voice. A student with bright blue hair pointed to an empty easel. "You're stationed next to me, I think." "Thanks," Alex said, settling his things. "I'm Yuki, first year too." Alex nodded, relaxing slightly at the genuine warmth in Yuki's smile. Maybe he could belong here after all. The professor began by asking each student to share something about their artistic journey. As others spoke of private lessons and art camps, Alex's anxiety returned. When his turn came, he took a deep breath. "I learned to draw on napkins at a coffee shop because paper was expensive," he said simply. "I was homeless until recently. But someone saw my work and believed in me. Now I'm here." A hush fell over the classroom. The professor studied him with newfound interest. "The most compelling art often comes from unexpected places," she said after a moment. "I look forward to seeing your perspective." As the class began their first exercise, Alex opened his sketchbook. Inside the cover, he'd taped a small note Keanu had included with the framed napkin. "Art is the bridge between our lives and our dreams. Keep building yours." With steady hands and a heart full of possibility, Alex began to draw. 1 year later, Sunrise Coffee Shop buzzed with excitement. The entire place had been transformed for the evening. Twinkling lights hung from the ceiling, the usual tables pushed to the sides to create an open gallery space. What had once been a wall of napkin sketches now featured a professionally printed banner. "From Napkins to New Beginnings, The Journey of Alex Chen." Mrs. DeLee moved through the crowd in her finest outfit, offering tiny cups of special jasmine tea and beaming with uncontained pride. I told him he had gift, she said to anyone who would listen. I knew from first day. Outside, a small line had formed as curious art lovers waited to enter the already packed shop. A local newspaper photographer snapped pictures while a reporter jotted notes about this unusual first gallery showing. Inside, Alex stood beside the centerpiece of the exhibition, the framed napkin portrait of Keanu Reeves that had changed everything. Around it hummed 20 street scenes, each telling a story of unseen lives. The series had a raw, compelling quality that more polished gallery pieces often lacked. "These aren't just drawings," explained the gallery owner who had arranged the showing. "They're windows into worlds most people walk past without seeing." Alex, now dressed in paint-splattered jeans and a clean button-up shirt, looked different than he had a year ago. Not just the new clothes or the healthier appearance, but something in his eyes. A quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. "Did you ever imagine this would happen?" asked Yuki, who had become a close friend at art school. Their blue hair now had purple streaks, and they'd helped Alex hang the entire show. "Never," Alex admitted, watching as a wealthy-looking couple studied one of his paintings with serious interest. "A year ago, I was just trying to stay warm." The door chimed, and Alex looked up to see Keanu slip quietly into the back of the crowd. Though he wore sunglasses indoors and a baseball cap pulled low, a few heads turned in recognition, but most people were too focused on the artwork to notice. Alex made his way through well-wishers to reach him. "You came," he said, unable to hide his surprise. "Wouldn't miss it," Keanu replied simply. "Impressive turnout." The gallery owner said, "We've already sold 8 pieces," Alex said, still amazed by this reality. "People actually want to own my art." "Of course they do. It's honest." Keanu surveyed the room. "I'm glad the napkin portrait is not for sale." "Some things aren't meant to be sold," Alex agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the crowd. A homeless man whom Alex recognized from his street days entered hesitantly, looking out of place among the art patrons. Without hesitation, Alex crossed the room to welcome him. "Pete, you made it," he said warmly, leading the man to a quiet corner where Mrs. Lee immediately brought him a plate of food. "These are all the places we know, just seen through different eyes now." Pete nodded, studying one drawing of a sheltered doorway, a place they'd both slept during particularly cold nights. "You got it right," he said gruffly. "The shadows and all." Later, as the evening wound down and the gallery owner tallied sales, Alex found himself standing beside Keanu again, both looking at the napkin portrait. "I have news," Alex said quietly. "The school nominated some of my work for a national scholarship competition. If I win, I could study in New York next summer." "You'll win," Keanu said with certainty. Alex smiled. "You know, when you first offered to help me, I kept waiting for the catch." "Nobody does something like that for a stranger without wanting something in return." "Some people do," Keanu replied. "The ones who remember what it's like to need help." A comfortable silence fell between them. "I started volunteering at the youth shelter," Alex said finally. "Teaching art classes on weekends. There's so much talent there just waiting for a chance." Keanu's eyes crinkled with genuine pleasure. The circle widens. As the evening came to a close, Mrs. Lee insisted on a picture of Alex with his most famous supporter, "for my wall," she declared. A local photographer obliged, capturing the moment when art and kindness had bridged 2 very different worlds. After everyone had gone and Mrs. Lee was closing up, Alex helped take down the lights. The coffee shop slowly returned to its normal self, though something had permanently shifted in the air. "You know," Mrs. Lee said, wiping down the counter, "your mother would be very proud." Alex touched the napkin portrait, now returned to its place of honor on the wall. "I think she would be," he agreed softly. Outside, spring rain fell gently on the Vancouver streets. Alex turned his face upward, letting the drops fall on his skin. Once he'd huddled from this rain, seeking any shelter he could find. Now he walked through it with purpose, keys to his own apartment in his pocket, a future unfolding before him. The simple sketch on a coffee shop napkin hadn't just changed his life, it had reminded him who he was meant to be.